Welcome to Heartwired, emotionally intelligent leadership for an AI world where technology meets humanity. I'm Dr. MJ, your host. My guest today, David Shar, builds kinder workplaces and kinder leaders. David is a human capital consultant, a keynote speaker, and a lecturer at the University of Maryland in organizational psychology. And you spend your days thinking about how do we make the working world more positive and meaningful for all of us. So thank you, David, and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here as well. So you built your whole practice around kindness, and that's not a word that usually comes into corporations and such, but yeah, you draw a hard line, though, between being nice and being kind. And a lot of people think that's the same thing, isn't it? But where's that line for you?
So kindness does sound really soft, right? Whenever I'm at a conference, a tagline, my talk title is usually the softest one in the conference. And I recognize that I have to win them over by making the business case for it. Because when you scrape down past that outer layer, it's not so soft. Building a kinder kind of workplace is real dollars and cents, nuts and bolts, good for your business. All of the things I do, passion decline and things like that, they feel like soft constructs, but it turns out that they're really impactful. Now, with kindness, what I'm not saying is that you should be nice all of the time. What I'm not saying is that everybody needs to be polite, on their best behavior, avoid conflict at all times. I actually believe very much in the opposite of that. I teach my students never to use the term conflict avoid or to talk about conflict management, not what do people always say they talk about, but we tend to think that we need to avoid conflict in the work and figure out ways to reduce conflict in the workplace. No, conflict is actually a really good thing because it means that people care enough to speak up and to offer opinions and to argue for their opinions. But it also means that you're getting a bunch of different ideas. I've spoken to so many people in leadership positions where it's just like they don't have anybody who's telling them no. They don't have anybody who's playing devil's advocate. And so the higher you climb in a lot of these organizations, the more you start believing the fallacy that you are infallible, that you are a genius in all things because everybody's saying, yep, that's brilliant, boss. No, absolutely not. So being nice is about this need to feel like you're liked, to make people feel comfortable around you and to like you. It's very easy to be nice and avoid telling people the hard truths. Being kind is much deeper than that. Being kind means I care enough about you that I'm going to tell you the hard things that maybe nobody else will. Being kind means to give feedback. Being kind means to be real with people when it's time to be real with them.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing up that whole conflict management or resolution. People do want to avoid conflict, but conflict, as you said, is really critical because that's the critical thinking that comes into play. And if it's done looking at the idea, not attacking the person, it's so much better. And yeah, I love what you're doing because when I was studying in my OD program, my organizational development program, I kind of came up with what I wanted to do. And the main thing is to make the workplace that you can actually be enriching, because I've worked in corporations for many years, and some of them are toxic. They're just like, you want to come home and take a shower right away because it's just get this out of me. But what you're doing is so important because it's not being wishy-washy. It's actually doing the right thing. And I thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And, you talk about AI and you can't, when we're talking about sycophantic, yes men, that's what ChatGPT has been accused of doing, where everything you say to ChatGPT, it tells you how genius you are and won't give you any credit. I saw recently that the newest version of Claude will straight up tell you when you're being an idiot. And some people don't appreciate it because they're so used to the robots telling them how great they are. And suddenly they have to look at themselves and recognize that, wait, every brilliant idea isn't. So I have both ChatGPT and Claude. So when Claude hurts my feelings too much, I just go back to ChatGPT so I can be brilliant again. Why do I need somebody to tell me I'm an idiot? I've got my wife for that, right? So like, but in all seriousness, that is a real issue when we surround ourselves with people and tools that don't give us the real news, and tell us where we might need redirection.
Yeah, I know. And chat is very much like, oh, that was so smart of you. Oh, you're going to do such a great job on that. Oh, wow, look at what you did. Yeah, that's why I like Claude better, because I get straight answers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this isn't really good.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And don't even get me started on ALEXA. Not going to say it because it'll set mine off, maybe yours and all the listeners. But my wife thinks that ALEXA and I have an inappropriate relationship because she'll tell me the weather and I'll say, oh, that's great. That's my favorite. And now she knows that 72 degrees is my favorite. And she'll say, oh, David, it's your favorite. And like she continues to listen afterwards. So I'll say something to my wife and she'll start responding. These robots are getting scary.
That is scary. That really is. Now, you did say to me when we talked the last time that letting someone stagnate is the least kind thing a leader can do. What is that? Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. So it's really interesting because I did my dissertation research, my doctoral research was in passion decline. And I conducted the first fully qualitative study on passion decline, why people fall out of love with work. And so going beyond burnout, because burnout is sort of like this episodic thing that hopefully you can get yourself out of. Passion decline, once you pass that point of no return, there's no getting it back. One of the really, really fascinating things in my research that I found was that about almost exactly half of my respondents had said that one of the major factors for losing their love for their work was overwork, right? And that is going through a merger and everything starts being dumped on you, being voluntold or even volunteering and taking things on yourself again and again and again and again, and nobody telling you, whoa, slow down. And so those types of things absolutely will lead to people burning out and even losing their passion for their work. That seemed obvious to me. I expected to find something like that. Work overload into burnout. It makes sense. There's a lot of research on that. What was fascinating to me was that in the very same study, the other half of my participants did not cite work overload and too much work. They cited too little work. They cited stagnating and feeling like there was no new place to go, that they had no more challenge, that they needed more to keep them stimulated and to make them. Growth is one of our innate kind of like the challenge and growth is one of our innate drivers. And so when you don't have that at work, that's a real problem. And so how do you make people or help people grow? First of all, you give them challenges, you give them stretch assignments, you do things like that. You make sure that you're constantly giving them something new goals to strive for, but you also need to give them feedback so that they can regulate those goals and understand where they are and where they're going and understand their progress. And if any one of those things is missing, then you really do run into the risk of somebody just starting to feel like they're just showing up every day and doing the same busy work and not make the connection and see how it's helping them in their own development.
So how do you bring that into the AI world? Because, now we're hearing AI is going to take over some of those, manual tasks or the tasks that, repetitive tasks. How do you see that fits into that whole thing of kindness?
Yeah, I think it could be really beneficial in terms of the mundane tasks, right? Often we see our work and we mistake the mundane tasks as being trivial. That mundane and trivial are not the same thing necessarily, right? But we see mundane tasks as being trivial because nobody's connecting the dots for us. So I see this in a lot of nonprofits and a lot of helping professions. You see people getting bogged down in the paperwork, so they lose the connection to that bigger mission, the thing that they came on board to do. And so this is not good for the individual, and it's not good for leadership, because you didn't bring this person in because you're like, oh, I hope they're really good at paperwork. Yeah, okay, that's a task, but they came here and you brought them in because you wanted them to connect to the mission of the organization. Hopefully, right? You wanted to have an impact. So if we can start taking all of those mundane and trivial feeling things and passing them off so that you can focus more on that deep work and more on that meaningful work, that's huge. And then you could see how we could suddenly be so much more productive and more creative because we're passing off the mundane stuff and we can really focus on those other things. Now, how this is going to work at scale, I don't know. Are we going to continue to work 40 plus hour weeks? Maybe not. And maybe that's a good thing. Typically, we bring in people as interns and then frontline and things like that. And doing the mundane tasks is how you get them prepped for the more meaningful, the deeper work. That's going to be complicated with this. So at scale, yeah, it makes me really uncomfortable and worried. Like, where do we go from here? And which organizations actually have a coherent plan? And is it enough for a handful of organizations to have coherent plans, or do we need something at a societal level? But beyond that, at the individual, the snapshot, I think that most of us would agree, yeah, like I want that in my job. I want to have ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, somebody else, Copilot, to write my emails for me and to, scan these documents for me for any pertinent information and things like that. I want that. I use Notion and I integrate Claude. Claude goes into my Notion and talk about a second brain. It's never acted like one to the extent that it does now. But, and I've tried using Notion a million times in the past and couldn't get past the onboarding, because of the setup. Now when you can have AI set it up, and so that, that's a bit of a tangent, but all of those things on an individual basis sound amazing and sound like they could really bring us more toward that meaningful work. But is it going to actually work out that way at a societal level, organizational level, even system level? I don't know. It's kind of like social media. We had really amazing plans for that because it was going to bring us all closer. And now, I won't even touch Facebook. It's a dumpster fire. But LinkedIn is doing some great stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see where the chips fall.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. It is going to be interesting. We live in interesting times. So just how it's all going to pan out. But I want to go back to something that you said to me, that a leader can either double down on AI or they can double down on being human.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think in any change initiative, people ask certain questions. There's a researcher, Armanakis, who said everybody in any change initiative, there's 5 core questions that people are asking, even if they're not asking them, right? And so when we communicate a change, we have to be explicit and answer these things explicitly. And one of them is change necessary? And the second one that I want to talk about is, because it's different, is this the right change, right? And so that's the challenge, because is change necessary? I think everybody would agree. I don't know if everybody would agree, but I think that we could get everybody on board to say, is change necessary? Yes, change is necessary because, the status quo is a myth. There is no status quo. We could be standing right here and doing really well, but the world, our competitors, our customers, society, law, everything is moving this direction. And so if we stand right here, now we are practically moving backwards. It's like at the mall. You go to the mall and you see those kids that run up the down escalator. If you stop moving midway, you don't actually stop moving. You start moving back in the wrong direction. So the status quo is a myth. Is change necessary? Yes. With AI out there, it's absolutely necessary. But then the second question people ask, is this the right change? And I think that a lot of people make the assumption that everybody is implementing all of this AI, and therefore, of course, it's necessary. And of course, we have to move in the exact same direction as everybody else. Now's the time to implement all of these AI and become more robotic. I'm not so sure that that's true. I think that right now, when everybody is moving that one direction, maybe, even though counterintuitive at its surface, maybe we move in a slightly different direction. As everybody becomes more robotic, what would happen if we became more human? And where would you want to work? At the place where everybody's more robotic or the place where everybody's more human? Where would you want to shop? Who do you want to do business with? Where everybody's a robot or where everybody's more human? And I think maybe this is another opportunity where we'll see benefits to society, because everywhere where they took you for granted as the customer, as the client, they took away the experience. We saw this with the internet, with Amazon. Think about all of the shopping that you do on Amazon. You never walk into a store anymore. But is that true? Do you never walk into a store? Or are there a couple stores that you still walk into? I still walk into Starbucks. Why? Starbucks offers me an experience. I remember back in my days as a Cold Stone franchisee many years ago.
Cold Stone.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love Cold Stone.
it was right when those up things were, right?
Yeah.
And I shared a wall with Starbucks. So like the coffee smells would come right through my vents. It was great. Waffle cones on one side, coffee on the other side. But I would go over to the coffee place. I was spending all of my money on like coffee every day. So my wife, for my birthday, got me one of those cake, like the desktop cake cup things.
Yeah.
And she's like, here, now you don't have to go to Starbucks. Do you know I continued going to Starbucks multiple times a day? Because there was something about walking out of my store, my office, right? And walking into Starbucks and being served and somebody joking with me, and they knew me because I was there way too much, and getting my fresh coffee from them. There was something about it, right? There was a human experience. It wasn't this transactional, here's a coffee that I could have gotten right from that K-cup on my desk. So we became more human in certain places, and those are the places that we still shop at. But I think that could also happen with AI, that the organizations that double down on their humanness are going to be the ones that can survive without that race toward the fastest, smartest AI.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you. That kind of gives us, coming into the AI world, we want more human connection. We want to have more. Well, I think, what was it? Mark Cuban went ahead and he's investing in events that are in person because of that same thing. We want the human connection. We want to have that experience rather than we can just be on Zoom and get the same experience, but it's not the same. And so I love that we're going to really crave that whole humanness. And that is, so busy sometimes that we lose that. So if we can offload all of the busy work to AI, we'll have hopefully more time to be that human.
Yeah, I hope that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk, you talked a little bit about change, and I know you teach organizational change. And this is the fastest change that I think we've ever had. And how does a leader, what is going to take a leader to keep their people grounded, yet still moving forward?
Yeah, maybe the second fastest, because remember, COVID was like 14 days to flatten the curve or something. What was that? So
that was like instantaneous.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. What are we going to have to do? I think, first of all, you have to understand people's concerns. One of the things with change management is that we're always thinking about the change. So we're always thinking about the future. But there's a good body of research that argues that we have to make space for people to mourn the loss of the old as we pull them toward the new. And I think that's really critical, that we don't just label people as dinosaurs or as change resistors, if they're not super excited moving forward with this. We have to recognize the good in what we've had and the things that we may be sacrificing in lieu of this new reality. And so of communication we talk about in change all the time. Change management, communicate. You can't over communicate. Although I don't know if that's true. I've seen a couple of my clients over communicate, but most of the time, err on the side of caution. You're probably under communicating. The problem, though, is that we think communication and we think communicating to people instead of opening lines for communication to us. There's never a time more than a change in something like this where there's that insecurity, that uncertainty. It is so critical that people have an outlet to communicate to you, right? And that you are there for it. None of that toxic, don't say, no, but the bright side, and quickly take them back over to the benefits. Listen and live in those concerns because they are valid. Yes, this change initiative is exciting because of the genius of these AI bots and because of it's going to make everybody more efficient and things like that. But also you as a manager or even as an executive or a business owner, are we 100% sure that you're not asking your people to train their eventual replacements? No, you're not. You're not 100% sure of that. So live in it and listen to the people. I think it's really extremely important to give people an outlet to talk. And oftentimes when they do come to us with real talk and they do come to us with real concerns, we shut it down so quick because we don't want that negativity in here, or we don't want to hear those things. We're only comfortable with positive stuff. But the most valuable commodity that exists in the workplace is trust. And when somebody trusts you enough to come to you and say, I'm worried, I'm scared. And even if they're saying it using language and tone that suggests that they're angry and pissed off, that takes a real level of trust. And so as soon as you shut that down, tell them why their emotions around this are misguided and not rational, as soon as you do that, you are destroying that trust that is the greatest commodity at work.
When I was going through my doctoral program, I wrote a paper called The Shadow Side of Change. And it was like, I used the metaphor of, I'm a Trekkie. So I used the metaphor of, the Borg that says resistance is futile. And I said, in my paper, and I really believe this, is you got to listen to the resistance. You got to pay attention to it, not just shove it under the rug because it's icky and negativity and all that, but to really kind of like understand where people are coming from. Maybe within that, there is some other solution that we wouldn't hear of if we didn't make that time. So I'm right there with you. So going back to what you said, people thinking I'm just training my replacement. What does a kind leader actually say to that? Honestly, because it's uncertainty.
Yeah. So I think that people don't know, right? And I think it's okay to say, I don't know. There was a really fascinating paper that happened that was written in the midst of a COVID pandemic before our COVID pandemic. This was like in Southeast Asia or somewhere. There was a different type of COVID pandemic and people were dying in this hospital in large numbers. And they were interviewing people. And one of the hospital administrators said, when people come to me with these concerns, I can't tell them that everything is going to be okay because I don't know that everything is going to be okay. But what I can tell them is that we're in this together, that we're figuring this out together, that together we are going to navigate this. And I think that's really important to be able to do that. We don't know what the end goal is going to be with these things. And so listen to our discussion here. We're talking about the dream of the vision of what this could be, and also the flip side, the shadow side of that, right? Yes. What it could be. And we don't know where the chips are going to fall. So I think having honest conversations about it are important, but I would double down on the fact that the more human you are during this process, the better it's going to be for you and everyone around you, because robots get replaced by robots. Humans can't be replaced by robots.
Absolutely. And also, when you talk about the conversation, can we leave the conversation just to the tech bros, as they call them? Or how do we as people start engaging in those conversations about what's happening?
Yeah, when I saw that you were doing this podcast, I was so excited that an OD PhD is doing this type of work because, yeah, there's so much of this. I get all these newsletters from tech bros and things like that, and it's very technical stuff. I had some students in my talent development class actually that did a workshop on AI and these chatbots. And their workshop, they opened up and spent the first like 5 minutes of a 20-minute workshop talking about how everything worked under the hood. They were talking to their fellow students who were IO psychology graduate students, right? And I said to them afterwards, the feedback I gave them was all of that stuff was wasted time because we don't all need to know what's happening under the hood. You need to get people where they are. I think that for the vast majority of us, what's really appropriate here and what's really concerning and really important for us to understand is how this is going to actually impact our lives, right? How do these things actually work? Not underneath the hood, but in practice. How do they work now? How are they going to work in the future? What's it going to do to our relationship with work, with leisure and income, with teamwork, with life generally? I think that those are the questions that so many people are asking. And those questions are technical in their own nature. But just like I talked about my talks sounding like they're the softest things, this is something, the softer side of this AI stuff is absolutely what we need to be talking about. It's the type of things that people are concerned about. They're not concerned about, oh, it's just a language processing model. It's not actually thinking. I don't care, because if it seems to think as well as I do at work, then I'm worried about my job, whether you're telling me, oh, but look inside the black box. I don't care about that. I don't care about that technical stuff. So I think it's really important that we have ODs and IOs and things like that, who traditionally, this is exactly what we do. We go in and we look at systems and we look at technologies and we talk about how they impact and interact with the human experience. And so that's why I think you're doing incredible work here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David. We're just about at time. So I want to thank you for building the kinder leaders for a more human world. And for those of you listening, you'll find his bio and links to get in touch with him in the show notes. And if this conversation moved you, please share it with someone. Subscribe to Heartwired so you'll never miss another one like this. And find every episode at drmjheartwired.com. I'm Dr. MJ. Until next time, lead with your heart and keep it wired for the people in front of you. Thank you.